Hello. I hope you can hear me. Let me make sure the microphone's on. Everything's working okay. Welcome. Another week, another F1 race. There's my favorite types of weekends are the ones when we have multiple F1 races. And this is a great start to the season. One race after the other before the break. So, this is what we like to see. Hope you guys had a great week. Before I do dive into the video, I do just want to thank you guys for all the support I have been getting on the channel. I just actually surpassed 100 subscribers today. And given that the channel actually legitimately started about 1 month ago or 2 months ago at the beginning of the year, that's a huge milestone for me. So I do want to thank all of you, all 101 of you. And I hope it's just the beginning. And I hope we do get to do this as often as we can. We get to engage with one another. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And let's keep it going. Qualifying session in Saudi Arabia. This track, I I just started a league with my friends on F123, and the second track of the year, of course, it was Saudi Arabia because we're trying to do it one-to-one with the actual calendar. And none of us are fairly talented at the game per se. So we were all trying to train for this Grand Prix, and that track is so difficult. I mean, I think I hit the barriers at least 50 times in the time trials trying to learn how to do this track. So I have no clue, and you gain so much more respect for the drivers when you try doing it yourself, albeit in a video game, just seeing how different it actually is and how difficult it is. And with that, Oliver Behrman, welcome to your first ever F1 qualifying session. Now, again, the circumstances for him to receive that opportunity weren't ideal. He did have to get in because Carlos Sainz has appendicitis. He did have surgery, though, so we're happy to hear that everything went okay. It was, as you would call it, a smooth operation from a smooth operator. Happy that Carlos Sainz is okay. I wish him a speedy recovery and hope to see him back before the Australian Grand Prix in 2 weeks. But when one is down, another one's up. And we got to see Oliver Behrman in his first ever qualifying session in F1. Now, he is an F2 driver, and he did qualify on pole position yesterday. So this isn't the first time he's ever been on the track. And in fact, clearly, he's pretty good at the track if he was able to land it on pole. But F1 and F2 are two completely different ball games. So in Q1, he did go out for the first time, and he actually managed to get it into Q2, which is pretty impressive for a young driver. Albeit he isn't a Ferrari that, realistically speaking, should be making Q3 every time that there isn't an issue with the car. But taking into account that he was just, I think it was 0.036 seconds off of Hamilton, he did pretty well. He was pretty close to nailing it into Q3. I'm sure he'll be happy with that performance. Although I don't think Ferrari are happy with the way their season has started. I mean, once again, not under their control, but first race, brake issues. Second race, you lose one of your drivers. Not the best start ever for Ferrari, but let's hope Oliver Behrman can do something tomorrow to get up into the points for Ferrari and for himself. I mean, that'd be a pretty great start for his F1 career to be getting points because not many drivers have the opportunity to have their first ever race in such a fairly dominant, let alone put aside the Red Bull, but fairly dominant car that should well be in the points. So I hope he has a great race tomorrow, and I hope this is just the first time we see him of many more to come in the future. So now we've gotten that out of the way, we can go on to everything else that happened throughout the qualifying session. Unfortunately, Zhou Guanyu did not set a time. He had a pretty big accident in FP3, and all that team scrambled. That Sauber team did everything they could to put that car back together before the Q1 session, and they were so close. He did go out on track. He did do an outlap, but it just wasn't quick enough to actually cross the finish line, or the start line in this case, before the time expired. So he finished Q1 with no time set. And even if he would have crossed the starting line and been able to attempt a fast hot lap, I don't really think it would have been a very competitive lap because his very last lap out on track was him crashing the car. And you have to regain your confidence somehow. And the only way to do that is by putting laps in the car. Now, for his sake, it's good that he at least got to one lap around the track so that tomorrow during the formation lap, it won't be his very first lap that he's out on the track again. Even if he would have had a hot lap, I don't think he would have gotten out of Q1, especially seeing as his teammate Bottas also didn't get out of Q1, so it's not like that car was well positioned to be getting out of Q1. But I'm happy everything's okay with him. Unfortunate that I didn't set a time for him and for the team, who clearly put a lot of effort into fixing that car in such a short window. Congratulations to them, although it didn't work out. It's a great effort to see from that team. Now, one thing I noticed, a professional F1 23 player myself, and noticed also today in the Q1 session, is that impeding is a big problem, especially in Q1 when there's 20 cars out on track. Given that there's so many cars out on track at the beginning and that there's so little space to actually navigate around these cars, it's very difficult not to be impeding someone at some point. I think it was Hulkenberg who was upset with one of the Williams. I believe it was Logan Sargent's Williams, because he was on a hot lap, or I guess he was warming. I'm not even sure, but he was right in the middle, and it's so difficult to move aside because it's such a tight track and such a fast track. So if your engineer doesn't properly communicate with you, you have no way of knowing who's coming. So that's going to be a big issue in the future as well. And we saw it today. There were no penalties given out, but I do think Lewis Hamilton received a fine yesterday for not being properly told and moving out of the way. We'll see how the drivers clean it up. Although today wasn't horrible, it was still a bit of an issue, especially in Q1. Some other notable moments in Q1 were Piastri tapping the wall on the exit of the final turn and still setting provisional pole, albeit he didn't finish on pole position because Max Verstappen, but it was still an impressive feat to basically smack that wall. It wasn't just a tap, it was a pretty hard hit. Fortunately, there was no damage to the car. He made it all the way to Q3, so it seemed like it didn't affect his performance too much, but it was a pretty big hit to keep going and still landed on provisional pole at the time. Besides that, Behrman also had a very close call with the wall, and I think it was poetic when the camera then panned to his father, who breathed the deepest sigh of relief, seeing the millimeter precision that his son had, to not hit the wall in his first qualifying session, and to then end up getting it out of Q1, which is a pretty big deal and a huge weight off your shoulders as a first-time F1 driver. Stroll had a quick performance at the end of Q1 going into Q2. Sure, you can say that the track temperatures were up there, and he was, I think, the last one to cross the finish line, or one of the last ones. So it makes sense. I think he ended up getting second place in Q1, although it doesn't really show the true pace because the others might not be pushing as hard. But, he did better than other times. So as a fellow Canadian, I can approve of that. So at the end of the Q1 session, we had both Alpines out, Ocon and Gasly. I still feel for Gasly. I think he's kicking himself in the shins after that decision he made to leave V-Carb now for the Alpines. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda's in Q3, whereas he can't even get close to getting out of Q1. Such a huge drop-off for Alpine. I still can't believe it. I hope they manage to do something because, at least in qualifying, they're even worse than they were last week. And sure, other teams have brought upgrades, but it's not acceptable at this point. They have to do something, and they have to do it soon if they want a chance at going on further and improving as well. Both Alpines were out. Both Saubers were out. Of course, Zhou Guan Yu, due to the juicy head with his car. Bottas was close, but it wasn't enough to get him into Q2. And Logan Sargent also got knocked out in Q1. I don't know how long he's going to be sticking around. I might actually be willing to take another hot takeout and say right now that I do not think Logan Sargent will be finishing this season as an F1 driver. And I don't say that lightly because I would love to see him have success, but he just doesn't live up. His performances are not good enough to be an F1 driver. He's nowhere near Alex Albon, and although I do believe, and performance shows that car has dropped off slightly compared to last year, he's nowhere near his teammate. I mean, Albon is still getting it into Q2. He's at least competing and fighting for Q3, whereas Logan Sargent, bottom of the list, when we have those two Alpine cars that are so much slower than everyone else. So just take that in for a second. Needs to be better. On to Q2, Hulkenberg, the qualifying hero for Haas. Engine problem, very first lap. Doesn't get to set a time in Q2. Might end up having to take a penalty. Might have to start from the pit lane. Solid start to the weekend for Haas, as per usual. Now, don't get me wrong, I am just kidding around. They did have a pretty solid weekend last weekend. Their pace is looking better than I expected. I had them finishing dead last this season. Might have to give that title over to Alpine pretty soon. Hulkenberg is a great qualifier, and there have been reports, or at least people hoping or suggesting that maybe he could be in consideration for one of those top seats as well. Maybe at Red Bull if Perez leaves, maybe at Mercedes. Who knows? He's an option. He's an option, and I'm sure he would love it. He would love to get on the podium, I think, more than anybody else. He's a quick qualifier. If he has a car in the race, I'm sure he could probably do something with it, and I would love to see it happen. So, sucks for him. I am sad to see it. Engine problems, no time set in Q2. Deserved more, really. He deserved more. But it is what it is. Early in the season, hopefully they'll figure out the kinks with the engine and keep going from there. Alonso, as per usual, was looking very quick at the beginning. Oliver Behrman, I don't know if it was the nerves or not, but he did lock up on his first attempt at a hot lap. Everybody's tires all around were improving. This is to be expected when it's just cooling off. The track's hot. There's rubber on the track. So the times were progressively getting quicker and quicker. And unfortunately, like I mentioned before, Behrman does not make it into Q3, which I think was the one thing everybody was rooting for. Because at this point, I think we all kind of expect Max Verstappen to be dominant or at least be on pole position or be fighting for a pole position. So we need something else to cheer for. And in this case, today we had the opportunity to be cheering for this young rookie to get into his first Q3 in his first F1 appearance. And he was so close. Oh, so close. But it was not meant to be today. Lewis Hamilton landed the 10th position, barely got out. See the difference between somebody who is a rookie and you're cheering and proud that he almost got in, and then you're disappointed in the 7-time world champion because he barely managed to get into Q3. But I guess that's the cycle of life. He had a great performance anyways. You could see the nerves on him a bit. It's to be expected, like I said. Hamilton squeaked by, didn't look great. Don't think he likes the car too much. I don't know how much effort he's actually going to be putting in this year. And as performances get worse, I will start to question whether Ferrari will start to question their decision on bringing in Lewis Hamilton and getting rid of Carlos Sainz. It will be tough. It will be tough if Carlos Sainz consistently outperforms Lewis Hamilton. And again, we have to take into account that Carlos Sainz is still at the peak of his career, where with all the possibility of getting any hate from any of you, I do believe that Lewis Hamilton is towards the declining stages of his career. Maybe not necessarily from her performance standpoint, but from a motivation or effort standpoint. I don't think it's possible to be as motivated as somebody who has not yet won anything and still has so much to prove. Sure, from a marketing standpoint, from a publicity standpoint, from a outside of racing standpoint, yeah, you can't go wrong having Lewis Hamilton on your team. But is it the right choice for the team overall? We shall see. As of now, Hamilton's not looking great this season. Hopefully, he improves. I think George Russell is going to demolish him this year. I think it will be good for George Russell because it'll give him confidence going into next year, whoever his teammate may be. I mean, he's already beaten Hamilton once. I don't see it not being a possibility again, especially this year when he's extra motivated and Hamilton's extra unmotivated. Regardless, both Mercedes did make it into Q3. Both Ferraris made it into Q3. Both McLarens made it into Q3. Both Aston Martins made it into Q3. And then we also had Yuki Tsunoda's V-Carb making it into Q3. And the only ones that were missing, of course, was the Ferrari. In this one, we had Behrman, Albon, Magnussen, and Ricciardo out. Magnussen, like I said, out as a Haas. Nico Hulkenberg out because of the engine problems at the beginning. Nothing too wild. I mean, this is all things that we're expecting at this point from these qualifying sessions. And the best cars are the ones that are making it into Q3. Very obvious. I know, what a statement. But still, it just seems to be the case over and over. So good for those teams. Q3 is where the magic happens. So let's get into Q3. Now, Perez set a very quick time at the beginning, But for Perez, this just seems to be his theme. Right when he does something very well, Verstappen comes out of nowhere and does it even better. That's so hard to take as a driver because everything you do, every time you think you're doing well, someone, your direct teammate, is coming and doing it even better than you are. Verstappen was quicker. Leclerc had a very scrappy first hot lap after he didn't even manage to set a time on his original hot lap. I wonder sometimes if Leclerc just likes to put more pressure on himself because he performs better in that high pressure situation. At least that's what I like to believe, because at the end of the qualifying session, he pulled out a flyer. He split the Red Bulls, which again is impressive to do because it's the Red Bulls. He beat Alonso's time, who had a very quick time on his first hot lap, and Alonso's a legend. I mean, he sets a great time, comes on the radio, mentions that it was a great time, and immediately says, "Let's go again." So he's fired up. You wouldn't say he's as old as he is because he has that passion, that desire. If I compare the way Hamilton views and talks over the radio and the way Alonso does, I would say Alonso's still in his first year. He's still passionate about it, and he goes for it every single time. He just loves the racing. He's in it for the racing at this point still. Red Bull were laps ahead. They were quick. Verstappen would have set the pole position even without having to do a second hot lap. It's what we expected. I mean, honestly, it was a hard track. It is a hard track. It's going to be a difficult race tomorrow. We didn't see any issues today in the qualifying session, which is surprising. But throughout the previous races, we have a 100% chance or probability that we will see a safety car tomorrow. There's no reason to ever wish a safety car in a race because that usually means there's some incident. But the one thing safety cars are good for is that they can shake up the strategy. And maybe some teams will be assuming or betting on these safety cars when they are coming up with their strategy. So there might be alternative strategies. We might get to see at least someone have a shot at beating those Red Bulls and Max Verstappen. It feels like it's a broken record at this point all throughout last year. And this year we're starting on the same foot. How to beat Red Bull, how to beat Red Bull, how to beat Red Bull. But that's the reality of it. We just need to find a way to catch up to the Red Bulls just to make it more entertaining, to make it more fun, essentially. The season is more fun when there's more drivers competing. I didn't touch on the McLarens too much. They didn't stand out. I mean, they're just solid drivers. We'll see what they do tomorrow because the qualifying grid set now. We know the grid for tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be tough. It's going to be a hard race. Hope everybody stays safe. It's going to be a quick race, and we will see what happens tomorrow. I'll be hopping on to another live after the race tomorrow, and we can break down that race. I might be doing that one in shorts format, so make sure to stay on the lookout for that. Thank you guys again. Make sure to leave a like, and if you did enjoy it, please make sure to subscribe. Right after this, I'm actually uploading, as we speak, the next video on the Red Bull saga. Make sure to check that one out. Share it with your friends, and see you guys next time. Bye.